What's something you witnessed, scary or otherwise, that you still can't explain to this day? I was taking a walk in the woods by my old house in the summer of 2020 and thinking of my grandpa. All of a sudden I heard his favorite song playing. No one was around. Still gives me chills. In Myrtle Beach, camping near the beach, my grandpa told me to come outside of our camper. When I did, I looked up in the sky to see what looked like a small orange fireball, just darting back and forth through the sky for a minute, and then hovering about. After what felt like a minute of this, the fireball all of a sudden shot out in the direction of the ocean, going what looked like 1,000,000 miles an hour and then disappeared. I wondered and still do wonder if it was a military flare or something, but I truly don't know. As a kid, I once saw a blurry human-shaped entity wave at me down a corridor. It looked like it was cloaked, as in like in a sci-fi way. I could only make out the vague shape and slightly see through it, but light was distorted. When I was a kid, we moved into a new house. All the bedrooms were upstairs. My sister and I were home with our mom. Dad was at work. All three of us were at the bottom of the stairs talking about something when a DVD that was in my room, up the stairs and around the corner, literally flew down the stairs. It didn't roll down the steps or slide down, it flew in the air right past us. Then 10 minutes later my mom made my sister and I bring our laundry up to our rooms. I was scared shitless. Worked at a tanning salon when I was a teen. It was in the basement of an old 70s apartment building. Since the very first day I worked there, weird stuff would occasionally happen. Faucets in the bathroom starting on their own, customers would say we knocked on their door or shouted their names while they tanned. Some customers were longtime clients and had all sorts of stories about it being haunted. Like most salons, we had cameras that monitored the hallways. Fronted the computer system told me which beds were in use, cleans dirty. So I'm alone one day, and I walk to clean a bed in the back hallway. It's a long hallway with rooms on each side that ended with a door to the laundry room. As I walked into room 6, right next to the laundry room, I took note that the laundry was done. The laundry room door was open with the light on and I could hear the dryer stopped. Now I'm in the room cleaning the bed when suddenly I hear a door slam so loudly. I jump, thinking it's a tenant or something, even though the door definitely didn't buzz. No, it's the laundry room door. It's closed and the light is off. But here's the thing. You cannot, in absolutely no way, slam that door. The floor in the laundry room is all warped by the door and it drags and sticks to the ground. You have to pull it really hard to get it to close. I stood there for about 5 minutes trying with all my might to slam that door and recreate what just happened. Not happening. That's when I totally freaked out and ran to the front and refused to go back there again all night. When I heard my own voice, from outside of my house, ask my doggo if they wanted their window closed. He panicked. I panicked. Threw some salt, shut and locked everything, and waited till morning. I had just rolled over to get comfy in bed after waking up for a moment. Something felt off and weird about my room. It was eerily silent, like all the sound had been muted. When I noticed a light in the corner of my room, at first I thought it was a car light, until I realized it was coming from my bathroom. It was a strange blue light to me. There were no windows or anything that I knew lit up that color in there. I started to get up to investigate. Back then my bed was lofted, so I was up 5 feet from the floor. That's when the light source started moving. I was just peering over the edge when what looked to be an orb of brilliant blue light slowly floated into my room. I sat terrified as it floated across the floor. Then stopped. Then floated towards me. It started getting cold and I tried to say something, but it's like the words were being sucked out of me like a dentist straw. Then next thing I know, I'm waking up to the morning sun like nothing happened. Except I was laying opposite to what I normally do, head where my feet usually are. I tried to play it off as a bad dream, but it felt real, and waking up in a new orientation makes me feel like it wasn't. Edit. A word. My parents tell this story about me as a child that scared them. Apparently I woke up very early one morning from a nightmare, crying and screaming. When they came to comfort me and ask me what was wrong, I kept telling them about a plane crash and that everyone is burning and falling. They put me back to sleep and went back to bed themselves, but when they did get up and put the news on 9/11 had happened and was all over the TV, they just looked at each other and freaked out because it was exactly what I had dreamt the night before. I, of course, don't remember anything. I was 4 years old when 9/11 happened and I've never had anything like it happen to me since. As a kid I was at home sick by myself, maybe 8 at the time, back before kids could not stay home by themselves. I was laying on the couch watching cartoons and I saw my mother's houseplant kinda rustling, swaying and then suddenly stop. No windows were open, it sat on an entertainment center nowhere near a window. Our air vents were on the floor along the baseboard next to a wall, and even if it was the air vent, there would be a constant breeze on the plant. During this time, and still am to this day, I was heavily invested in the paranormal. Ghosts, cryptids, aliens. I was terrified of them, but I would absorb any media about them. Seeing the plant do that instantly made me think ghost, and I laid there terrified, absolutely terrified. I turned my body over to just face the back of the couch so I wouldn't see anything else if it transpired. I remember just staring at the back of the couch for maybe an hour, petrified. No one was home so I couldn't call out, I was trapped. I got to thinking in my head if I turned and faced the room again, a ghost would be there to grab me, kill me, whatever my 8-year-old brain thought up. I eventually got brave enough to turn around to see nothing was there, but I can't explain enough the sheer terror I felt staring at the back of the couch thinking something was behind me, and knowing if I turned around, I was surely doomed. And still to this day, I can't explain the houseplant moving like that. I have been waiting to tell this somewhere. Last fall I was in Toronto and walking on College Street to get to this video arcade place. Turns out they were not open yet, so we kept walking to go to another arcade I found on Google Maps that was open but stayed on this particular street. On the way we passed by this older woman, must have been in her 80s. She stood out because she looked borderline homeless, was a smaller woman and had one pant leg slightly up on her leg and these little light red sandal shoes and a scarf loosely draped around her head neck. And no bag, no belongings with her. We continued walking down the street about 10 minutes, and the same looking woman walked past us in the same direction as the first one, wearing the exact same thing. The shoes and the pant leg stood out immediately. At first I thought it was the same woman, but then realized that would be impossible because 1. Her age, and 2. She would have had to run across the street and down and then cross it again to come back towards us. Then I thought maybe it's a twin, but her pant leg and shoes and scarf that all stood out to me was the exact same. The pant leg was the main stick out for me. So I still have no idea what that was, a glitch in the matrix, an angel. I try not to think about it because I can't logically wrap my head around what that was, but I will always remember it. I can't explain it, but I do have a good guess. November 17th, 2023 at approximately 5:20 a.m. to 5:36 a.m. I stepped out onto the front porch. It was very dark. I really like to see the stars. It's pretty. I see a triangle silently pass over the house. It was lit up with circular lights on 2 edges. As it passed over the house, it was bigger and bigger, almost the size of half the house. I was fascinated and then scared, so I went back in. There is an Air Force base not more than 60 miles away. The silence was scary. I had my hat sitting on the dash. My windshield wipers were on as it was raining a bit. I was driving and out of nowhere my hat lifted up, not a whole lot but like it was flicked, almost as if my windshield wiper picked it up. My girlfriend saw it too and was just as puzzled as I was. I don't know what happened, but it didn't do it again. It wasn't a bump and it wasn't the vent. I was in my 20s and my then boyfriend and I were at his parents' house. Just the two of us and the family dog. He was opening mail in the dining room and I was rinsing a glass in the kitchen, within sight of him about 15 feet away. We were talking and suddenly came loud footsteps overhead. Stomp, 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 stomp. He froze and I looked at him like WTF. But the look on his face was not confusion or panic, oh no. It was, oh shit, now I have to tell her the house is haunted. So then he let me in on the family secret. Some entity, it had a strong masculine energy to me, lived in their attic. BF's mom had tried nailing the crawl space door shut, placing typewriters in front of it, etc. Always got reopened. And the dog would refuse to go upstairs unless carried directly into one of the bedrooms. Not me, but my family. My family and I own a piece of property and land and a cabin deep in the woods. It's remote and quiet and vast and desolate and isolated. There's even a gate that requires a password and lock that only my family and I know. No one else. Not even our friends who go out there with us. It's the perfect setting for a horror movie or murder mystery. Several times, my family has witnessed a slender man-looking entity on the ridge behind the cabin. It was white and faceless and tall. And it didn't walk across the ridge. It glided and shimmered and barely hovered above the ground while still not touching it, and then vanished into the forest. It's a very remote and desolate and isolated area, with no access to it except for us, so it couldn't be kids fucking around. We still have no explanation for it to this day. In the very early 90s, I was backpacking through Egypt and spent a good deal of time in Dahab by the sea. Accommodation was very sparse, a double bed in a 10-foot x 12-foot room. One time I woke up in the middle of the night with a guy dressed up in a white Navy uniform complete with medals standing at the end of my bed. I yelled, "No, go away," at him and he disappeared. When was like 6, I think I had like 8-10 cars that were metal was playing with them in our closed balcony. Remember being alone that day, was thirsty so went to drink water. Kitchen was on the other side of the house. When I come back my cars were gone, I never saw them again. Had some experiences when I was a kid living at my parents' house. Was using the computer late at night in the office room, which had portraits of each family member on the wall behind me. I heard a crash, turn around to see my portrait had fallen. It was the type that had a string on the back, so the frame was hanging on a nail stuck to the wall. The nail was still intact, so I didn't know how the portrait would have suddenly fallen. And of course, of all portraits to fall in that way, it had to be mine. Laying in bed, I would sometimes hear breathing near me. I thought I was hearing my own breathing, so would stop momentarily, and still hear the same breathing. This led to a habit of sleeping with a radio TV on to drown out the sound. When my family moved out of that house, I never experienced anything similar, so whatever it was, I guess it decided to stay. I was walking alone around 11 p.m. on an early winter evening. I lived in a town with large swaths of forested land between neighborhoods. I turned a corner in one such place and there was a little girl standing alone under a streetlight. She was crying and quite clearly terrified. She was only wearing a light sweater over a t-shirt and a pair of slacks. Her boots were clearly too large for her. She let me walk her home, but wouldn't say much in between sobs. What little she did say was unintelligible with her crying. She gestured towards a road not far off my own path and we set off. Soon she got really quiet. I spoke with her once in a while. Sometimes she'd just keep walking, staring ahead. Sometimes she would just turn and look at me. She never spoke or nodded or anything that could be construed as a response. She let me lay my coat over her for a bit. Looking at her in detail, I'd have guessed she was no more than 6 or 7. The sleeves of my coat dragged in the slush. We got to a house with no lights on. She went to the door and I stood there to watch her go in. I imagined a warm welcome and lots of crying. I imagined her parents might be frantically searching for her around town. I watched this little girl go straight through the door. She walked through the slab and glass as if it wasn't there. No lights turned on. No reaction from inside. That's when I realized there wasn't a single footprint along the driveway and footpath she'd taken. I froze in shock for a while and eventually went home. The only evidence I had from my encounter was the wet and dirty cuffs of my coat sleeves. Sounds pretty mundane. When I was a kid, I had this CD player. Didn't have any special features, didn't, for example, have a feature wherein it would loop anything. I lay down in bed at night as I always did with a story on. If I fell asleep, the CD would end. All would be silent in the morning because CDs don't last 8 hours. So I wake up and realize the CD is still playing, even after it's not moved, like at all. It's the part where I had fallen asleep before. It's 8 hours later. To this day, I can't explain it. Huge tear opened in the sky. Stayed for 30 seconds or so. It's not really possible to explain the color other than if red and yellow didn't make orange, but made something else that my brain couldn't process. I've never had visual hallucinations before nor after that, so I can't write it off.